Right then, 2 weeks ago we were, if we could just turn back to First Chronicles chapter 4, it's just where we were 2 weeks ago. First Chronicles chapter 4, and we'll read about verse 10. First Chronicles chapter 4 and verse 10. We looked at the prayer of Jabez, and I'm not going to come back to the passage, but I'm going to look at a continuation of that subject. Look at verse 10. And Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that thou would bless me indeed, and enlarge my coast, and that thine hand might be with me, and that thou wouldest keep me from evil, that it may not grieve me." And God granted him that which he requested. And we looked at 3 things about the prayer. It was an exceptional prayer. It was an earnest prayer, and it was an endearing prayer. I'm sure it endeared the heart of God. And why all these things? Because God answered. That's why God answered. I just maybe like to look at the 3-4 words there, and enlarge my coast. We'll look at the subject tonight of progress to enlargement. But before I say that, just one of the things I did mention 2 weeks ago was, on the surface it could look as if it was a selfish prayer, because it's "Oh, that thou would bless me and enlarge my coast, that thy hand might be with me, that thou keepest me, that it may not grieve me." No, it wasn't a selfish prayer. And the reason why I know, because first of all, selfish prayers wouldn't have been answered by the Lord. That's the first thing. And second thing is that when there is a spiritual prayer answered by God, although it's all to do with himself on the surface, when God answers our prayers through spiritual prayer, and God answers, there'll always be an overflow. Always be an overflow, my friend. So we can take that for granted. So we can pray tonight the prayer of Jabez. But one of the things, of course, was that type of prayer in nature, my friend, is a prayer of total surrender. It's a prayer of total surrender, because although he's asking for specific things, of course, enlargement, and that thine hand might be with me, keep me from evil. Although there were specific things as to where and when God would bless him, that was in the hands of God. I'm just reading a little article. It's a preacher saying, when he was preaching in America, I think it was New York, and he was preaching on surrender. He said, 1 or 2 of God's people said, "Oh, I couldn't pray the prayer of Jabez, because what if God sent me to Africa?" So he said, "I got to South Africa and I was preaching at conferences, and South Africans said, 'Oh, I can't pray the prayer of Jabez.' Why? God might send me in New York." No, it's total surrender. But having said that, let's come back now to where I read in the book of Deuteronomy, and we'll look at progress to enlargement. There's always got to be progress. He was praying for enlargement, and the principle, my friend, of progress, it's a principle that runs through the Bible. It's a principle, for example, John was preaching on humility, and that's something we need to progress on all the time. We progress in humility. So the principle of progressing in all aspects of our Christian life is always there all the time. And as John says, we don't want any of this pretense. I mean, I've probably told you this little story before, but I'll tell you again. And I'm not making excuses for myself because I should never have said this. But many years ago in Zion, there was a lad who favourite prayer: Lord, I'm just a worm. Lord, I'm just a worm. Every prayer. I'm not saying he said that non-stop, but every prayer, Lord, I'm just a worm. So this particular day, I was having a disagreement on him with something. I said, if you're nothing but a worm. So he jumped right down my throat. How dare you? How dare you call me a worm? I says, you're always saying you're a worm, so I thought I'd just call you up. No, I don't make any excuses for that. No progress to enlargement. You know, I was just looking at, it's good to look at what's happening around us in regards to God's people in our nation and other nations, but in our own nation. I was just looking, I get the Free Church magazine. It's in the theological seminary that Gary goes to. It's a Free Church seminary. And I was just reading in 2017 in regards to enlargement. In 2017, the Free Church's General Assembly made a resolution, passed a resolution, and that the resolution is that by they hope to plant and open 30 new churches by 2030. That's not too far away. That's 9 years away. That was a resolution that they made in 2017. That's 4 years ago. That they would, by church planting, they would open 30 new churches. Thank God for their vision, my friend. Thank God for their vision. Thank God for their vision for enlargement. And you might be saying, well, how are they doing? Well, they've opened quite a few churches since 2017. They're not opened 30 or half of that. But having said that, they've still opened quite a few churches in the Free Church. But that's their aim, that's their goal for enlargement. 30 new churches in Scotland by 2030. And thank God for that. Thank God, my friend. And I know that God is blessing in these churches. I know that there is churches where in the past few years, I'm only talking about the Free Church now, in the Free Church, some of the Free Churches, even up the Highlands, there's been additions. There's been the Sunday schools been well added to. Some churches have had to have 2 pastors because of the congregation. And we rejoice with those whom we rejoice with, and thank God for that. There's always, in regards to evangelism, in regards to having a vision, in regards to one minister in particular, many years ago, Irene and myself were holidaying in North Uist in the Outer Hebrides, and there is a causeway from North Uist to Benbecula and a causeway from Benbecula to South Uist. Now, when Irene and myself there, we befriended a Christian policeman, and he gave us a wee run one day over the causeways into South Uist. Now, when Irene got myself on South Uist, I think I'm right in saying there was no non-Roman Catholics. I went on the internet today to have a look at South Uist, and driving through South Uist, then there was Roman Catholic shrines at the side of the road. It's like something you might expect maybe in rural Spain or Republic of Ireland. And on the internet today, and you can see all the shrines on the internet just now. And so using some of them are big at the side of the road, big shrines to the Virgin Mary, big shrines, and sometimes small shrines just at the side of the road. Now That was the situation when Irene myself was there. I don't think there was a non-Roman Catholic about. But a free church minister went over and pioneered a work. And there's been a free church in South Uist for years. Why? One man had a vision, my friend. I think it was easy to go to South Uist, and I'll tell you, look at the work in the works also in Barra. Now, Barra is another island that was, I think, about 100% Roman Catholic in the Outer Hebrides. And to this day, there's a work in Barra as well. And thank God for that. But that all comes down to the vision of a free church minister for what? For enlargement. Not enlargement around the Highlands, about the Highlands, where there's a vast lot of nominal Protestantism anyway in a lot of the churches. No, enlargement in South Uist, which was totally, and the church is still going, because I was on the internet finding out who's the minister in South Uist. So my friend, thank God for that. And it's just a case of keeping that vision for ourselves, for a vision for ourselves, and a vision for expansion, and a vision, my friend, to see Zion Baptist Church filled to the glory of God. One thing I wanted to, there's just a few points I wanted to look at is this. The first thing I want to look at is failure to progress. My friend, one thing we must never find ourselves in is failing to progress spiritually. And you see, when we come back to Deuteronomy, sometimes coming back to Deuteronomy, this passage is all about failure. Look at verse 3, and it came to pass in the 40th year. Why the 40th year? In the 11th month and the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel until all that the Lord had given him. And verse 7 of coming down, take your journey and go to the mount. Why? Why? Failure because a whole generation failed God. A whole generation failed God. And that generation, my friend, failed God to such an extent, God just allowed them to die out. And they never saw the promised land. They never progressed. Only 2 men out of a nation progressed and fulfilled the promises of God in their life. And you know the 2 men, Caleb and Joshua. But the rest for 40 days, my friend, 40 years wandered the wilderness. And that's why it's good to ask ourselves tonight, how much progress are we making in the Christian life? Now we can go through it, don't have time, every aspect of the Christian life we need to progress. I just wonder tonight, I just want to speak for a minute or two, maybe to one little group of people now. Last Sunday evening, Kenneth was, Sunday morning it was, Kenneth was talking about the movers, the people who will move here and move there. Now, let me speak for a moment just to the adherents of Zion Baptist Church. Now, you might have been coming to Zion for years. You may even have been once in the membership, and you're a full membership, now you're adherent. And you've never progressed. Now, there's not any doubt, if someone had to say to you, have you any inclination to leave Zion? Not at all. And if somebody said to you, what is your church? Oh, my church is Zion Baptist Church. And you might say that unashamedly. If someone said to you, what church do you go to? Zion Baptist Church. My friend, why don't you progress from being an adherent member to a full member? Because God will never really bless you as the way you'd like to until you become part of a local church, and the local church is for you is Zion Baptist Church. So if you're an adherent tonight, you've no qualms about this is your church. If you like Zion Baptist Church and you're not going to go to any other church. But thinking that, my friend, think about progress. Think about moving from being an adherent to a full member. And you know something? God will bless you. I know that. God will bless you, my friend, if you move. Maybe you've been an ex-member. An ex-member at one time, and now you are in the situation of being an adherent member. My friend, why don't you consider before the Lord the need to come back into the full membership again and be a member of the church? And God will bless you for that. God will bless you. The whole area is not just I'm referring to speaking to adherents of the church tonight, but in all our total life, there's got to be that progress, because it's the Christian life all about progress. It's all about progress. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Second Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 17. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. But we all with open face beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. It's something, that's a progress that's taking place right here and now. It will come to its finality when we get to heaven. I'll come to that finality. My friend, that's how we've got to check our spiritual lives. Are we right here and now? Are we being checked? Are we experiencing the glory of God in our lives right here and now? I mentioned a text of scripture when I was praying at the communion service. If I have to mention it to Andrew, we were walking towards the cars. Then I shall know as I am known. Now I'm going to progress to that. What does that mean? Then shall I know. It's not in this passage. It's not in this passage. But then shall I know, even as I am known. I've never. How do you plumb the depths of that? Because I sometimes say to myself, well, then shall I know as I am known. How am I known by the Lord? Obviously, it's referring to the Lord of ourselves. How am I known by the Lord? Am I known in a partial way? No, of course not. I'm known in totality by God. Am I saying that? We'll come to a knowledge of God in His absoluteness? No, my friend. But somehow I do believe that in eternity and for all eternity, God will reveal, how could I put this? God will continually, constantly reveal Himself to us. That's not getting into the absoluteness of God. That's just getting into what God can reveal of Himself. What a progression that's going to be, yeah? What a progression. That baffles me, that text. Always baffled me. Then shall I know as I am known. But one of the sad things about reading what we did in the Corinthian epistle, look at 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians in chapter 3, isn't it? I think it's what we're looking for, 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians in chapter 3, I think is what I'm looking for. verse and chapter 3. And I, brethren, this is sad, could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with meat, for hitherto you were not able to bear it, neither yet now are ye able. Oh, why no progress? It's there, for you're yet carnal. You can't spiritually progress and be carnal, my friend, for you're yet carnal. For whereas there is among you envying and strife and divisions, are ye not carnal and walk as men? For one said, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos. Are ye not carnal? That's why even the apostolic church, my friend, never reached the heights it could have. Apostolic church never reached its full potential. Why? Because even in the apostolic church, even while the apostles are still alive and writing epistles and visiting the churches, carnality. One of the manifestations of the carnality was division. I was looking back at Acts chapter 6, which I think was the first time there's a bit of maybe complaining in the church. Acts chapter 6. And in those days, that's like when the number of the disciples was multiplied now, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, that might never have been done intentionally. How big was the church? Well, we know that in the day of Pentecost, there was 1,000 or 2,000, that was men. We know then it would be in Acts 3, there was 5,000. So, and sometimes these numbers were men, and you've got to add women and children. So, within a short period of time, and it says when the number of the disciples was multiplied to what? Well, some has hazarded a guess. The church might have been 20,000 in Jerusalem. That's a big number. Okay, you say there wasn't 20,000 widows. No, of course there wasn't. But out of the 20,000, there must have been a number of a good number of widows. And it says here, the Grecian widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, it's a difficult thing. The logistics of it wasn't necessarily too easy to make sure that all the widows were supported. But you'll notice how it was, the fallout was the Grecians against the Hebrews. Who were the Grecians? Well, they were Jews my friend, who didn't speak neither Hebrew or Aramaic, they spoke Greek. And they were the ones who had come maybe from different parts of the Roman Empire to Pentecost, may have been even converted at Pentecost and stayed on. And they didn't use the Old Testament in Hebrew, they used a Greek version called the Septuagint. And not only that, but obviously there was cultural differences. Living in the Roman Empire, Greek speaking, there was cultural differences. And it's just something that jumped right out of the page to me. Why? What was the answer? What is the answer to bringing people of different cultures, bringing them all and putting them all in one church? Different people of different cultures, different people of different colours of skin, cultures, ethnic minorities. What's the answer to have everybody all living in harmony? It jumped at the page. Verse 42. And daily in the temple and in every house, they cease not to what? Talk about the culture. Nothing wrong about talking about the culture. Nothing wrong about talking about cultural differences. Nothing wrong in these things. Nothing wrong at all. The fact that there was cultural differences. They cease not to what? Teach and preach Jesus Christ. That was the answer to. because the Roman Empire was full of different cultures and different colours of skin, people of different colours of skin, and different cultures. And of course, we'll have even in our own times, but we've seen it very, very quickly, even in the Christian church. Cultures have divided the Christian church. And we've had churches where the white supremacy churches, think of over in America, white supremacy churches and churches, and I think of the first president or prime minister of India, Gandhi, and this was even in his own country. Gandhi was a devout Hindu, but he started reading the Bible and took an interest in Christianity. So one day he lived in Calcutta. He said to his husband back in the 1940s, he said, I'll maybe go to church and see what this is Christianity is all about. So he went to a church, he picked that church at random, got to the door, he stopped. This church is only for whites and high caste Hindus, and you're neither any of the two. That turned them against Christianity. In other words, culture. The culture became the name of the game. And that's why to this day, and I tell you, I don't like talking about black churches. Because we don't talk about white churches, and I don't even like talking about black gospel. In fact, sometime recently, somebody was calling it white gospel music. Never in the name of heaven, white gospel music. When did admission to the Christian church and the basis of fellowship in the Christian church ever come down to the colour of one person's skin or culture or and I've been in churches in Africa and churches in Caribbean and all kinds of different churches. I've always enjoyed myself. No, that's it, my friend. Daily in the temple and in every house, they cease not to teach and preach Jesus Christ. Oh, saturate your life, your family life, your church, with talking about Jesus. You don't need to worry about all these cultural differences, my friend. No, sometimes there's a failure to progress. That brings us to the second thing, and that is coming back to where we were in Deuteronomy. God obviously had to, and now talking about focusing on progress, God had to refocus the whole of Israel, because for 40 years they had wandered. That generation had died, and only Caleb and Joshua and a whole generation now who have grown up now, they need to be refocused. And that's why the Lord said to them, verse 8, behold, I've set the land before you. Go in and possess the land, which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them and to their seed after them. And look, the reason why all this happened, look at down at verse 25. What happened? Oh, a disaster. If ever there was a disaster, it was this. 12 spies, the little children remind us in the Sunday school, 12 men went to spy in Canaan, 10 were bad and 2 were good. What a disaster. What a disaster. Verse 25, they took of the fruit of the land in their hands, brought it down unto us, brought his word again, it says, a good land. Notwithstanding, you would not go up, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God, and you murmured in your tents and said, the Lord hated us and brought us out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the terrible, despicable thing to say to God. And so their whole refocus, they had to be refocused, my friend, on the promised land. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 4 for a moment. 1 Timothy chapter 4. And First Timothy chapter 4 and verse Paul. Now I know that Timothy was an office bearer, but what applies to Timothy obviously applies to us all. Verse 14 of 1 Timothy 4, neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee by prophecy with the laying on of the hands of his presbytery. Now I know he was ordained an office bearer, but having said that, meditate upon these things and give thyself wholly to them, that thy profiting, that in some of the more modern versions, and it can be translated, that your progress may appear to all. That your progress may appear. What does that mean? It means, my friend, as God's people tonight, we should be able to look at each other as God's people and say, well, we're just progressing. We're progressing as a church. We're going forward in a beautiful progress. And it may appear to all. It's something, my friend, it's just something. It's just something that if we're progressing as Christians, it's something that'll be a stick out. That's something. It's not something that's hidden. It's something. It's just a stick out, my friend. You know the reason why. You know the reason why. Why has it, even in our own church, we've seen people come along? We have professed faith in Christ before they join, maybe inside. And then the wheels come off. And the wheels come off. Why? Look at Romans chapter 12. Oh, chapter 12, my friend. And verse 2. Romans 12 and 2. This is why the wheels have come off. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Why we've seen it in our own church, people professing Christ may have been very active in the church, may have been an office bearer in the church, and the wheels come off. Why? Because, my friend, there's no in-betweens. There's no in-betweens on either being conformed to this world or we're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And there's only one way to spiritually progress as a Christian, and that comes through the renewing, transformed by the renewing of your mind. And really, when the wheels come off, what causes that? People who may profess to be Christian, all of a sudden getting ties with the world, and before they know where they are, they're being conformed to this world. Lot made a bad choice. Lot made a bad choice, my friend. Made a bad choice and ruined his life. I know the Bible calls him just Lot, not disputing the word of God in any way. He made a wrong choice. What was it? He made a choice to be conformed to this world and the sin of the world of his day, and ruined his life. Even in regards to that, make sure you always make the right choices as a Christian, my friend. Because sometimes we make friendships, and it's good to have nice friends, and spiritual friends. That's good. But even if you make a wrong choice in your friendship, say you make a friendship and maybe it's not a friendship that you thought it would be, and that type of thing, and maybe it doesn't benefit you spiritually, you can always break your friendship. Always break a friendship. Take a wrong job, you can always replace the job ultimately. But make sure when it comes to marriage, my friends, you make the right choice as a Christian. Why? So you make the wrong choice, you just don't say, I made the wrong choice and I'm going to jump out this marriage. You can't, my friend. No. Make sure you make the right choices and seek God's will for your life. But of course, that brings us to then what do we need to progress? Faith, of course. Faith. Caleb. Let's look over at Joshua chapter 14. Caleb. Joshua chapter 14. Before we look at Caleb, Caleb, my friend, is a great example of someone who progressed as a Christian, child of God. He was a great father, a great example of fatherhood. Now, this is Father's Day today. Let me tell you a little story about Father's Day 30 years ago today. 30 years ago today, Irene and myself were backpacking in Canada. And we arrived at Toronto and decided to spend the first weekend in Toronto, and I think we lived in a youth hostel. Anyway, we decided on the Sunday morning and night to go to a Baptist church called Jarvis Street Baptist Church. Jarvis Street Baptist Church. The preaching was poor. Oh dear me. Eric Gurr, a guy from England, Eric Gurr, preached 30 minutes or 35 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. His preaching was poor. I'll never forget one thing he said. He looked over the congregation and said, "This is Father's Day today. I see children here. Where's their fathers? I see wives here today. Where's their husbands? Failed fatherhood." That's all I got. That's all I got, which I've carried with me for 30 years. Preaching was very poor, Eric Gurr, very, very poor. But I've always carried that with me. Where I see children. Where's their fathers? I see wives. Where's their husbands? Failed fatherhood. Oh, my friend, Caleb. You know what I like about Caleb? If we just look at Joshua chapter 14 and just verse 7 for a moment, verse 7. 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him word again as it was in mine heart. Nevertheless, my brethren went up with me, made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God. And then verse 12. Now therefore give me this mountain. What age is he now? 80. Now give me this mountain. Here's that. Nothing's going to age or anything else is going to hold back this man from progressing to his inheritance. Give me this mountain, whereof the Lord spake in that day. For thou heardest in that day how the Anakims were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. And Joshua blessed him, verse 13, gave unto Caleb the son of Jephunneh Hebron for an inheritance. How do I know not only was an exceptional man of faith, how do I know in Father's Day today? He was an exceptional father in the spirit that he had himself as the spirit he passed on to his family. That's quite simple, my friend. Look at Judges chapter 1. Judges chapter 1. Like father, like daughter. Verse 14 of Judges chapter 1. And it came to pass when she came, that's Caleb's daughter, Achsah. Came to pass when that's Achsah came to him, she moved him to ask of her father a field. And she lighted from off her ass, and Caleb said unto her, what wilt thou? She said unto him, talk about expansion, talk about progress, talk about enlargement. Spirit of her dad was in her. What wilt thou? She said unto him, give me a blessing. For thou hast given me a southland. That was the spirit of Jabez, my friend. Will thou not bless me? Will thou not bless me? That was the spirit of Jabez. That's the spirit of Achsah. And she said, give me a blessing. For thou hast given me a southland, give me also springs of water. And Ciel gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. You know something? John was talking this morning about, in regards to humility, pretense that can be put on, and that can be put on my whole Christian lives. There's one place that pretense goes out the window. You know where it is? In your home. Do you want to know what kind of caliber of my Christian life? Ask Irene. Because we've lived together for over 50 years. Now, you might know me for 50 years. Some of you know me for 40 years and 30 years. And you'll think you know me, and you probably do. If you want to know what caliber I'm a Christian, ask Irene. Why? Because I live with her. And I live in front of her and with her. And there's not any pretenses. And that's what my friend, you might outside your home, like as if you're some great saint. And then if you to ask maybe the people that you live with, just exactly the caliber of your Christianity, they might have a different story to tell. Make sure, if you're a Christian, whoever you're living with, now that's marriage, or if you're younger living with your mum and dad, or that type of situation, I know that what I'm talking about doesn't apply if you're living in your own. Well, that's a difficult thing. Well, even sometimes too. Ask the neighbours too. Ask the neighbours if you want to know a bit about myself. I've got 11 of them, 11 neighbours' houses here. Ask the neighbours too. Ask about myself. Just how do I live myself in front of them and with them in that type of situation. No, my friend. This is when the chips is down, and this is it. This is when the pretense stops. It's in our homes. It's our testimony in our homes, and what we're passing on as fathers and mothers to our children, to our grandchildren, and for some of us, great grandchildren. There's a verse I'd like to look up, Isaiah chapter 54. Isaiah chapter 54. And just before I come to read it, it's going to be our final scripture. Isaiah chapter 4, it's verse 2. In the 19th century, there was a lad called William Carey. He had a great burden to take the gospel to India, but he had a great burden for missionary work. And it so happened that the Reformed Baptist people that he was with, he was a Baptist, were quite hesitant, didn't share his vision for missionary work. He just didn't share his vision. So this association of Baptists, he gathered them all around them and preached one day on this text, coming up to lengthen thy cords, strengthen thy stakes. That's 54. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. And he preached so powerfully. The Baptist Missionary Society was formed out of that. He preached so powerfully on enlargement, progress to enlargement. Lengthen thy stakes, lengthen thy cords, strengthen thy stakes, for thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. And he ended up, of course, in India, if you know the story. But the Baptist Mission Society sent missions all over the world. Why? Very much through the vision of one man, William Carey, but through preaching that, his fellow ministers shared and caught his vision in the Baptist Missionary Fellowship. And not only that, but at the same time, there was missionary associations all spreading up. And when Carey was asked to, this is the last thing I'm going to say, when Carey was asked to sum up that sermon on Isaiah 54, he said, I can only sum up this. Expect great things from God. Attempt great things for God. That's it. Well, who among us is my friend in our spiritual progress and our desire for enlargement? Who's going to expect great things from God? Who's going to attempt great things for God? I hope we will. Individual lives in our church life. Attempt great things for God. Expect great things from God. And you know something? I believe God will do it for us. God will do that for us and bless us in Zion Baptist Church. So we'll leave the sermon here. God willing, in 2 weeks' time we'll be back and from holiday, and I think we'll continue on the progress to enlargement in 2 weeks' time, God willing. So we'll leave it there.